Hey folks, Raging Poo here, back with another Magic the Gathering video, and I have a spicy deck for you today in the Duel Commander format. I had another game that I thought was pretty cool. I just brewed this one up, and it's gonna look like nonsense, so I'm going to reorder it so I can explain what's going on here a little better. And just like that, we're back. This deck is pretty crazy. It's all over the place. I had to reorder it so I could explain this a little better. And I knew it would just look like nonsense to you guys unless I made it a cohesive thing. So I'm going to do a quick deck tech, and then I'm going to get into the round as quick as I can. So here are the mana sources. This pile and this pile. Down here, there's Yavimaya hiding at the bottom. And everything that isn't mana is basically interacting with our opponents or trying to force some type of ridiculous combo. So let's start at the beginning, I guess. I made this deck around Pattern of Rebirth. I've made similar decks in the past. I knew that if you put this on a creature and you can sacrifice it, there are ways to win the game, and that's exactly what this deck does. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but let's just start with the most basic one, I suppose. So if you have one of your sacrifice outlets in play and Academy Rector with one other creature, you can sacrifice the Academy Rector to go get Pattern of Rebirth, put it on the other creature. Then you sacrifice that creature to get Boonweaver Giant. You sacrifice Boonweaver Giant to get Karmic God, returning Boonweaver Giant. Then you get Body Double, copying Boonweaver Giant. And then you get Revelark. Once you're at this point, you can then use Body Double to copy Revelark, and Karmic God can return Boonweaver Giant. That will allow you to get any creature from your library into play. The sequence from here is you can do a lot of different things, but there are fatties over here to reanimate. I have a reanimation package right here. A few ways to dump them into the yard naturally and some surveil lands. So it's kind of like Reanimator and Tutor for your creature and put it into play kind of deck. So that's one of the ways that you can do it. And once you can get every creature in play, you're going to win. You can also recycle them. The same way with the Body Double Karmic Guides, you can use Ashen Rider to blow up all their lands, Worldspine Worm to create an arbitrarily large amount of 5/5 creatures. Another way that you can get there is by using Flash. You can flash in Academy Rector to get Omniscience, and then if you have any way to search for a creature, you can get Runescarred Demon. Runescarred Demon gets Razaketh. And then from there, you can sacrifice the Runescarred Demon to Razaketh to get either Vaultborn Tyrant or Worldspine Worm. If you're really low on life, you have to get Vaultborn Tyrant. But normally speaking, you can just get this, and this will give you ample tutors, because every time you sacrifice it, you can make 3 worms, and you can sacrifice those to go get your other creatures. Notably, you can actually sacrifice Worldspine Worm to Razaketh, and then just go search Worldspine Worm. The same trick also works here with Eldritch Evolution, because it shuffles back in before the search. So, in that same way, once you have Omniscience and the ability to tutor anything and play it, that's also a way to win. Flash also just works great with most of these creatures. You flash in a Vaultborn Tyrant, or an Ashen Rider, or Woodfall Primus. These are all really strong things to be doing in Worldspine Worm. So they're good all on their own that way as well. And then yet another way that we can use Flash is with Arena Rector here to get Ugin. You can also just sacrifice Arena Rector normally with all the other sacrifice outlets. So that's kind of what's going on here. The interaction package is kind of small, but just enough to try to shove through what we're doing. And then we have 17 tutors, 17 ways to search for our combo, and a bunch of mana. So that's about it. If you have any other questions, just ask in the comments. I know this one's kind of complicated, but that's about it. So I'll see you guys in the first round. Hey folks, here we are for round 1. I forgot to mention my commander, by the way. It doesn't come up very often, but it's Baby Atraxa. I know that the larger Atraxa is more commonly played in this format, but I've always liked the small one, and it just does so many things. It's great for control, great for combo, lots of different things, and this is my favorite color pairing in the game, so I went with Baby Atraxa here. And I'm playing against Felia, which is one of the top decks for sure, probably top 3, maybe top 5, but very, very strong. I always find that whenever I'm playing against this deck that it's like pretty strong. And this particular build is very hateful, as you will see. So here at my starter hand, I think it's pretty good. It only has one green source, which is kind of stinks because I want a lot to go with the survival. But I have a ramp, I have a survival, and I have something I wouldn't mind putting in the yard, so I can set up different combos this way. I also have a sacrifice outlet for the various rectors. So this seems like an okay hand, and I'm pretty close to getting there. So let's see how it goes. They start with Gemstone Caverns, so they basically stole the play. Here I go get Tropical Island and play Delighted Halfling. It immediately eats a Swords to Plowshares, and this person, I think, was fearing potential counterspells, so decides to go ahead and just jam Felia right off the bat. And here I just play my survival, preparing for the future, and then they slam a Tangle Wire, which is very nasty with Felia. It means that I'm always going to have 4 permanents tapped every turn because they can flicker it with Felia until I remove the Felia. And also, it's kind of like I have to tap down 4, but they only have to tap down 2 because each turn it ticks down and they can tap it. So it's only 3 things they have to tap, and one of them is the Tangle Wire. So they only have to tap down 2 permanents while I have to tap down 4. So right off the bat, in kind of a dicey spot, and this is a pretty brutal situation. I haven't seen Tangle Wire in very many of the list. I'm not sure if it's stock, but it's pretty good here. So on my upkeep, before I tap anything, I decide to pitch Angel of Glory's Rise to get a mana dork. And in this case, I got Deathrite Shaman because I don't have any other green mana. It's the only mana dork that I could cast or permanent that I could really put into play right now that would be beneficial to me. Trying to flood the board with as many permanents as possible so that I can potentially get around this Tangle Wire situation, which is already looking kind of rough. And here I play the Deathrite Shaman and pass. They take down the Tangle Wire, of course, and then tap 3 permanents and follow up with a Thraben Inspector, which puts even more things into play to tap to the Tangle Wire. So they have just like an insane start. This is like really, really good for them. And I can't block effectively, so I do not. And on my upkeep, I eat the Swords of Plowshares because I'm tapping all of my stuff anyway. There's nothing I can really do about it, so I got a little damage in with the Deathrite. And here I draw a Woodfall Primus, which is another thing that I can pitch to the survival. Like, if Tangle Wire wasn't in play, I'd be winning next turn. But as is, it's looking pretty rough. And then they slam a Winter Moon, which is just the death knell. I sat here and thought about it for a little while to see if there was something I could cook up, try to see if I could get out of this somehow, some way, but the combination of these cards in conjunction with one another, I don't have any basics in my list. I'm just flat out dead. So that was pretty nasty. And yeah, I think I just thought about it on my upkeep for a while and then decided to concede once I looked at my draw. This is pretty nasty. There's not really much in my deck that can get out of this. Never really seen this exact configuration of cards either from a Felia deck, but I mean, props to them if this is a brew or something they cooked up. Pretty nasty. But let's get into game 2. Here we are for game 2, folks, against Felia. And I don't know if y'all have ever played a game of Magic where you just thought about it later, or whenever it was happening, you're like, that was nice, you know, and then later on you thought about it and you're like, yeah, that was nice. This is one of those games. This is one of those sets because y'all just saw round 1. It was disgusting. So let's see what happens next, what follows. Here I keep my hand. It's not the greatest. It has Boonweaver Giant in it. You basically never want to draw this card. One of the downsides of this deck is that it has a lot of cards that you basically never want to draw. And again, I'm a little tight on my green sources. There are not, if you look at the deck tag and you look at the lands, there's not very many non-green producing lands in my deck, and that was definitely intentional. So here I start with Noble Hierarch. They did not have the Gemstone Caverns this time. And I drew Dark Ritual, which is pretty good. I played Delighted Halfling and Prepare for the Future. Here I just decided to attack with the Noble Hierarch instead of sacrificing it to Diabolic Intent. Because I don't quite have what I need yet. This is best to set up an A plus B combo, and I don't really have an A or a B, so I'm waiting to see what shakes loose before I decide to do that. And they get Swift Reconfiguration with their Enlightened Tutor. And it's just a removal spell. Doesn't really work versus the mana dorks because they can still tap for mana, but I suppose they are preparing for my Atraxa. And just because I don't want to deal with instant speed interaction, I go ahead and, well, by the way, I play a Hedge Maze and mill a Body Double. I don't want to deal with instant speed interaction, so I go ahead and play Atraxa, which, I mean, it's nice when I do the Atraxa thing, but it is in no way critical for my deck to win. I don't mind this, so I'm just kind of playing Atraxa to get the removal spell out of their hands, so that the next time I go for something that is impactful, it will have a higher chance of working and not being interrupted by that card. So they play a White Plume Adventurer, which is obviously a great card. I'm not a huge fan of the initiative mechanic, but that's something for perhaps another video. Either which way, it's not that big of a deal. I liked it a lot at first when I first saw it hit Legacy, and then it just was everywhere, and it just became annoying. I'll keep it short on that, but not a huge fan of the initiative. So here I drew Arena Rector, which is really nice. That was like a sick draw. You've seen the deck tech and you've seen the deck. Like, you might be able to think of like what's the line here or whatever. But if you want to, you can pause the video and try to think about what I'm going to do. But I cast Dark Ritual, cast Arena Rector, and just sacrifice it to get Ugin. And here, I didn't quite. This is one of the biggest misplays I guess I did. It's not that big of a deal, but it's something that I definitely should have thought about. Was exactly what I was going to get with my Diabolic Intent, and I was probably going to get another combo piece. That's what I was thinking when I cast it, and I just kept open as many colors as possible, but I should have worried about my black mana. I made so much black mana this turn with the Dark Ritual, and I did not. I used it all up, but I ended up getting Ugin and getting Thoughtseize, and I don't have the ability to cast it this turn, although it doesn't matter too much, but it could have mattered, and I probably should have kept the black mana up to cast the Thoughtseize, and then kill the creature, attack with the Noble Hierarch, get the initiative, and then basically stop them from ever getting it back with Ugin, which will also vomit a bunch of permanents into play. So that was our game 2. Basically, we just took turns dumpstering each other, and let's see what happened in game 3. Here we are for game 3. And after 2 turns of just, taking each other out, we have this final game where they are on the play for the first time. But they basically took the play the first game when they had the Gemstone Caverns. So here we are. And this hand is a bit weird. I think a lot of people probably mulligan this one because it doesn't have green mana. It's definitely a thing. The deck doesn't usually run into these problems, but I happen to keep drawing my non-green lands. Either which way, I decided to keep this one because I think it's pretty strong. And it has the line to deny them a bunch of mana very early on while sticking a reasonable sized threat. So I decided to go with that. And there's a couple different ways you can play this, but I decided to keep. They go Plains Go. And if you want to, think about what you would do here on this turn. Think like, hey, there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but what I ultimately decided to do was the most aggressive play, which is 2-for-1ing myself with the Dark Ritual in order to get Demonic Tutor going. And with Demonic Tutor, I search for Flash, which goes with Woodfall Primus rather nicely. So I decided to do that. Felia comes into play, and then I cast Flash, killing 2 of their lands and putting a 5/5 with Trample into play. They denied my lands game 1, so I got the opportunity to deny their lands here in game 3. And they end up casting a Solitude. One small misplay from them, I'd say, is that there was absolutely no reason to do this now. They pitched Ravages of War, which looks like it's not going to be very good this game. They'll probably not even get there if they, because I just killed all their lands. But they should have untapped and seen if there was perhaps a better pitch. There's no real reason. Like, Forced Negation doesn't counter Solitude, so they could not have been playing around that. Daze works the same. So it's just better to make your decisions with more information, but perhaps they just wanted to take it out as soon as possible. And here I drew Karmic Guide and Body Double. These are some of the cards that you definitely don't want to draw, especially when you're comboing with Academy Rector or a Pattern of Rebirth, but sometimes they're okay just to cast. It's not the best cards in the world. They're kind of expensive for what they do, but they're still all right if the games get grindy. And they played a Flagstones. I don't know if they had Flagstones in their starter hand. But if they did, they definitely made a misplay. Maybe they thought their basics were very safe or something, and usually they are, but in this case, they definitely were not. And here I drew a green source finally and play Noble Hierarch. And they're hitting their land still, kind of just making it happen, despite getting messed up pretty bad. And Static Prison plus Felia is also a really interesting combo that I haven't seen. It's probably in lists, but I just haven't seen it. And you just flicker it, and you'll basically have unlimited energy to keep the creature locked out while growing your Felia. Seems strong. So here I go with Sylvan Caryatid, which I top decked, and now they can't flicker that one. And they Enlightened Tutor on their upkeep for Urza Saga, which is another interesting play by them. They might be on tilt because of what's happening. I'm not quite sure. But they didn't play Urza Saga. They played Rishadan Port. So again, I don't see a reason to do that. They could have potentially got something else. If they wanted to play Saga this turn, I guess it makes sense, but they didn't do that. And they took my Noble Hierarch again, and I did not draw a land. I really wanted to land there, but now, and they also didn't port me, which is strange. But now I put a bunch of creatures into play so that I can hopefully cast one of these other spells next turn. And now they play the Urza Saga, they flicker the Static Prison again, taking out the Hierarch to reduce the amount that I can attack them back, I suppose. And here, there's a couple of different options, but one of the things that I have to consider is that if I reanimate, I could reanimate the Solitude. That's the only creature in the graveyard to take out Felia. But if I reanimate it, they'll have the ability to replay Felia and flicker the Solitude back to their side, killing my creatures. So I don't want that to happen. So I decided to go with Body Double, which just copies it. And if they flicker my Body Double, then I'll get to keep copying Solitude over and over, removing their threat. So it's not correct for them to do that. And they just replay their Felia, which makes sense. And they couldn't really attack with Felia as things stood, because I would definitely just block. And they played Talon Gates to phase it out. However, that means that they cannot use Static Prison to remove it. So they're in a bit of a squeeze as well. I'm just kind of biding my time, trying to find the best window to deploy my cards and get maximum value out of each of my cards. Starting up 2 lands is definitely a plus there. And they seem to be running out of steam. So get back my Solitude. Give myself a little bit of a life buffer by attacking. And here, I do decide to use Dance of the Dead to take their Solitude and kill Felia, because they need 6 mana to redeploy it. And they don't have it currently. And they're about to not have it. Because there's another play that I've made a lot with Atraxa here. It catches people off guard. So I play Atraxa, and when somebody has an Urza Saga, I like it especially when they play it on the first turn, because then it's at 1, it has 1 counter on it, and then they usually tap it because you can't make a construct with it. But if I cast Atraxa, I can make them skip a step and go straight to 2 where they miss a construct. And in this case, they're going straight to 3, and they did not respond appropriately. So they did not make their construct, and they have to tutor right now. They don't even get to float the mana for their main phase, and that was enough for them. I have a pretty nasty board, and they likely were not getting out of this. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I may continue to keep making these videos if you guys like them. Y'all take it easy. Raging Boob signing out.